Welcome to Repetition and Contrast, where we provide tools for creative entrepreneurship. I am Alan, and today we're talking about the 5 basic shapes. We're going to talk about the 5 basic shapes for a couple weeks here. Those shapes are sphere, prism, pyramid, cylinder, and cone. And today what I really want to encourage you to do is do value studies of, at least 3 more of these shapes. We already did a value study of a sphere. I think it's really important to pull these things up, put them in light, and then see how they work. And what I did was I went to Michael's and I bought styrofoam versions of each one of these shapes, and I put them under a lamp, and then I went to draw them. Now, for many of you, this could be incredibly boring. For some of you, it might be incredibly interesting. I'm going to challenge you with the process with just a handful of things that I'm going to be talking about here in this video. The first thing that I'm going to challenge you with is the idea of trying to make your finished pieces look as polished as possible in terms of the actual piece of paper that you have as a finished artifact. So as you're seeing with these that I'm making, I taped them off and put them on a board. And the trick to taping things is, to apply the tape to, a surface a handful of times so that you get the sticky off of it until you can apply it to a piece of paper without running the risk of ripping the piece of paper. Part of the reason I want you to do this now is because I think that if you play with seeing how much sticky you've got to get off the tape during these exercises, when you go to make final pieces here in a few lessons, it's going to be that much easier for you to tape things off. The second trick to using the tape is to put the tape to the absolute edge of the drawing paper, so that you end up with a nice clean border around the entire piece. There are a handful of reasons for this. Number one is you sort of inadvertently make a frame for the piece in the way that you have taped things off. The second thing, of course, is that using the tape. By the way, I'm using the second thing I'm going to challenge you with is the idea of different media. So the very first one I did the way that we did the last one with pencils, and now I'm going to do a value study with markers. That's what I was showing you there in the video. So I'm using tape also to mask things. So as I'm drawing, if I feel like I might miss or if I just want to be a little bit lazier about exactly where my drawing is going to end, I mask things off. Like I use tape to set it up to where I can't draw past a specific border. And that's what's happening right now, is that I'm trying to make a really, really clean background with my markers. And by using tape, in order to mask things off, I can draw past a specific thing. Just there, I used a piece of paper as a mask. So if I don't want to take the time to tape something down, by having to pull all the sticky off the tape or whatever, I can just use a piece of paper as a mask, and that way I can draw past the point of the actual ink marks. But on the actual drawing, you'll see really, really clean lines. So in addition to doing value studies, what I'm trying to challenge you to do is try to make very polished, finished looking pieces, so that you'll know how to make polished, finished looking pieces as you get into things that are beyond the scope of just these exercises. And I'm sorry I don't have another camera angle for you when I'm doing this. I thought that I had shot one, and it looks like my other camera I was in the wrong place. I'll do a better job in future lessons, I promise, making sure that you have plenty of angles to see. So that you can see everything that I'm doing clearly. So just like our previous example, though, I did take a good solid 30 to 45 minutes per each one of these drawings, just to make sure that I was thinking through everything. And just like in the previous drawings, I'm trying to look at my value study and make sure that the values that I'm getting out of my objects match the values that I generated in my initial study, going from darkest to lightest values. And again, I'm generating five values that I feel are equal distances apart. Although I will say, looking at it in the video, the range between the middle and the next to darkest do not look super distant in terms of how they appear on the screen. But I promise you, in the actual room, there's enough difference between them. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm dealing with reflected light, and I'm trying to deal with shadows and all of the things. So for my final value study that you're going to watch me do here, I did these with watercolor pencils, and that way I could work with pencil for a bit, but eventually pull out a brush and start working with that. So one of the tricks to using watercolor in general is this idea of beginning the drawing with the absolute lightest valued pencil you have, or color you have. If you're not using watercolor pencils, you're using straight ahead watercolor. So we go from lightest to darkest generally, even though I went from darkest to light just then when I was putting together that value study. What I'm going to do when I get to the actual cylinder, which is what I'm going to draw for my study, is I'm going to move from lightest to darkest. I'm going to begin by pulling together my lighter values, and then work towards making them darker as I paint. So yeah, that's really it. I have two major challenges for you with these value studies, in addition to just doing the value study. The first major challenge is try to make your pieces look as polished as possible so that you have the experience of trying to make your pieces look polished. And then the second challenge I have for you is to try a handful of other mediums. We've been doing pencils for a few weeks now. Today I want to challenge you to think about more finished looking medium, and the finished looking mediums would be watercolor or ink. And just then, what you saw me do was when I pulled the tape off that I was using to mask a little bit too early, and it caused me to have a spotch on my watercolor. And so what you're seeing me do right now is using some white gouache to finish the cylinder in a way that polishes it, because I needed to go over some of the watercolor that I accidentally kind of spilled as a result of yanking the tape too early in the process. So be patient. I'm demonstrating lack of patience in doing this particular exercise for you, and hopefully you won't have a similar problem. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. Next week, we're going to draw objects using these 5 shapes. And I look forward to talking to you then.